Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Monaco-based YouTuber and the man in 2016 to beat Lewis Hamilton in the same machinery, Nico Rosberg has given his analysis on the top 6 drivers of 2022. Very interesting and very different indeed to what the drivers and the team principals came up with, especially in light of what we might expect from 2023. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. So these were the rankings that the team bosses came up with here a few weeks ago. This came out at the end of December. The team bosses came up with this: Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton, Perez. Now, this is always biased, and certainly is, I believe, in this case, by the car, right? At the end of the day, we don't see Albon appearing here. We do on the drivers one. Norris is here 6th. There was some, I think, magazines and newspapers coming out with their analysis that were putting Norris even up to 2nd. I think Norris is quite a personal, like a polarizing one, right, on these lists, because often either people think, well, Norris is an absolute stud, getting the most out of that McLaren, like what a phenomenal driver, potential future world champion. And some are like, well, he's not won a race yet. Like, who are these people drinking the Kool-Aid type thing? Which I understand as well. Tough to say where Norris should be, but he's certainly up there at the very least. Depending on whether you put him 2nd or 6th, I think all is kind of justified. But it may, potentially even any ranking in that range is reasonable enough. Now, Perez being 5th from the team principals, I think, I like Perez, but I mean, come on, man, this is a bit car biased. Maybe the same for Sainz. Alonso gets in here, even Bottas gets in here as well, despite the fact that he wasn't really impressive for the last half of the season. Did great early on though, in fairness, in a relatively good alpha. Romeo, Vettel rounds out the top 10, and yeah, the top 4, Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton, I think is about right, but the order is obviously up for debate. Now, the drivers themselves came up with the following. Again, Verstappen number 1, I mean, that's self-evident, we don't need to talk anymore about that. Leclerc P2 in the drivers rankings, then Hamilton, Russell, Norris, Alonso, Sainz, Albon, Vettel, Perez. Bit better, I think, than the team principals one. Nonetheless, maybe not exactly how I would do it, but still, I quite like the way they've got this going. Hamilton and Russell is always a difficult one. The drivers here that I believe all 19 drivers, except for Lewis Hamilton, interestingly enough, voted in these. I wonder if they were allowed to vote for themselves, which is exactly how it goes. But yeah, Hamilton and Russell were tied for 3rd. I think it's really difficult to differentiate between the two because on average, if you look at points, Russell was ahead. If you look at race pace, Hamilton was ahead. If you look at qualifying average, Hamilton, I think, was winning that one 13-9. Obviously, really difficult to beat Hamilton in qualifying anyway. And I mean, yeah, still. So if you look at pure pace and stuff, and in terms of when like the cars were equal and he wasn't doing the guinea pig stuff, Hamilton was generally stronger and put up the better fight to the top guys. But at the same time, he's expected to do so, right? If Russell had been within 20 points of Hamilton this season in his first season in the team, that would have been, and Hamilton's been dominating this team for years, like that would have been an impressive performance from Russell. To beat him is incredibly impressive. Obviously, safety car luck and other factors helped Russell's cause, but nonetheless, right, given what he achieved with what he was expected to achieve, you could argue Russell had a better season, which is kind of what Rosberg says here in a second, that, well, I'll share for you guys now. So he does his rankings. He's, I mean, it's a hilarious video, to be honest, but I'll share a brief clip of it, basically, where he talks about the Hamilton-Russell thing, and also maybe a bit on the top 5 drivers of all time, suggesting that, yeah, Schumacher, Senna, Hamilton, and Fangio being the top 4, with the 5th, as he doesn't really state the 5th as it stands, but then he does give his top 6, actually, drivers of the season.
2nd place, I would go for George Russell. It's the first year in Mercedes. He did an incredibly consistent year with such a difficult car. They got the car so wrong at the beginning of the season. They were trying to figure it out, doing different setups and everything. He was just always there. I finished top 5 like almost every race this year. I mean, it's incredible. So you just gotta give your respect to that, I think. And with Lewis Hamilton as a teammate, to beat him over the course of a whole year. And I think George just did a really incredible season. He was always fast. Even when Lewis always has these special days, very often, where he's untouchable. But even then, George was right behind him. He's always right behind him at the very least, and if not in front of him. So really did a great job there. That's not to say that Lewis didn't do a good season as well. He was much more unlucky, Lewis, and had a lot more like stuff going on, or just a very mixed start to the year. For me, it's really like almost sure that he's going to be a top 5 driver of all time. With the likes of Senna, Hamilton, and Schumacher, and someone else. Where the 4th one, who would you pick? Who would you take as the 4th? Fangio, of course. That's quite easy actually. So it's Schumacher, Senna, Hamilton, Fangio. That's top 4. That's quite an easy one, I think. And then you would put Verstappen there very soon. Not yet, because he has only 2 titles, but he'll be there like very soon, I'm sure. So that's pretty impressive. You know, he's only 24, 25 years old.
Just a quick note as well on the top 5 of all time that he comes up with there. Of course, it's always difficult to order these, but I kind of agree with, okay, Schumacher, Senna, Hamilton, and then Fangio, of course. And then the 5th is kind of difficult. I mean, maybe you'd have to say Vettel right now with 4 world titles. That's certainly arguable. I think you probably do have to put Vettel right now, but you guys can disagree in the comments section below. He reckons Verstappen will get there soon with 2 world titles, might be more in the future. So Verstappen obviously dominated the season. I mean, won an obscene amount of races, broke the record, of course, 15 race wins. He gets number 1. Now, the rest of this is quite interesting. Alonso getting number 6, I thought was quite nice. He threw him on there. I think deservedly so as well. I think given overall performance and pace, Alonso said himself, and other drivers agree, that was one of his most competitive seasons ever. Just didn't have the car at times, and also didn't have the reliability to make it work, unfortunately. Norris in 5th, I quite like. I wouldn't necessarily put him higher than this. You maybe could if the car was better, that McLaren, but it's always difficult to say. The order between 2 and 4 is quite interesting. Now, I'm sure these are really close in his mind here, but I do think this is quite interesting just in light of the fact that Rosberg has a good incentive to, you know, gas up Hamilton as much as is possible. And he did, in fairness, right? And we'll see in a second. And, you know, he gives these thoughts on Hamilton, the fact that this guy sometimes has days where he's just untouchable and you just can't beat him, whatever machinery you've got. And I do wonder, like, in the future, what other drivers will say about Verstappen, because, you know, a lot of Hamilton's former teammates say similar things, that when he was on, he's just impossible to beat. And Rosberg says the same thing, and even says, you know, he has those days quite a lot. But nonetheless, gives Russell a benefit of the doubt, even puts Russell in seconds, which is, you know, I can understand having Russell over Hamilton in maybe 3rd or 4th, but to have Russell second over Leclerc is quite the statement, really, just because, you know, Russell had a great season compared to what he was expected to do. Outplaced Hamilton, of course, was what, P4 in the drivers in the end, with Sainz P5, Hamilton P6. So great season, lots of top 5, you know, some mistakes, of course, in there, but still good defending, great racing on the whole. Won a race, right, which has got to be commended, because, you know, winning a race in that Mercedes compared to Leclerc winning only 3 races in that Ferrari is also interesting. Leclerc had an interesting season. He started off so well. His qualifying pace was phenomenal the whole season. In fairness, so was the qualifying ability of that F175, but he did make a few mistakes. The France one was, of course, a bit of a dagger. Nonetheless, Verstappen would have won the title anyway, given the way the season had gone and the development and, you know, the tyre wear that Ferrari were experiencing. So I can understand putting Leclerc down. He made a few mistakes. His mistakes generally seem to be more costly than Verstappen's. Like when Verstappen makes an error, he does a 360 spin, wins the race anyway in Hungary, and went off track in Spain, also won the race. When Leclerc makes mistakes, it does tend to cost him positions. Russell also made mistakes this year in terms of, you know, collision with Sainz, collision with Perez, and some other things as well, which maybe weren't ideal, but on the whole did a great job. So, you know, I can understand. I think the way the drivers had it, to be honest, having like Russell and Hamilton tied for 3rd is maybe the way to go. And I thought maybe Leclerc deserves 2nd still, but quite the statement really, and well, kind of shows Rosberg's belief in what Russell has done and can achieve going forwards, that he's not only putting Russell 2nd, but with Leclerc 3rd and Hamilton all the way down in 4th, given, as I say, the incentive for Rosberg, as he still probably has really, to rank Hamilton as high as he possibly can, such that Rosberg looks as good as he possibly can, having beaten him back in 2016 and equal machinery. But, you know, Russell's now done the same thing, so I suppose maybe that carries a little bit less weight in some people's minds. And just to comment as well on the statement that he made on Hamilton, stating that Lewis has these special days very often indeed where he is untouchable, but George, even on those days, was right behind him. And that's not to say Lewis didn't have a good season. He was unlucky, but giving Russell the benefit of the doubt. So Hamilton 4th on that season in Rosberg's minds might have been a different story had the cars been different. And of course, we'll see relatively soon what the grid potential competitiveness looks like. Hamilton has actually mentioned that he would like to see a potential 5-way battle. I'm sure in Hamilton's ideal world, he's got maybe a 2-way battle with him winning, but you know, a 5-way battle is more challenging. But he says that, yeah, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, and he also mentions, you know, why not McLaren? Of course, he's going to mention McLaren, his former team, getting them up there. And he also says, what about Alpine? Could they get into the mix? So I don't know he necessarily hoped for this, but he certainly implied that he would kind of like to see that, you know, what if those teams are competitive? And I mean, he probably doesn't realistically believe it's going to be happening, but nonetheless, it would be kind of nice to see how things go. Aston Martin, I also believe, will be ones making significant progress over the next couple of seasons. Couple of statistics to close up with. Thought this is interesting for Max Verstappen. His points tallies over the years, starting at Toro Rosso, then turning into Red Bull in 2016, had 204 points that season. Even in 2020, didn't have many more points points than that, but the last couple of years has been breaking records. 454, of course, the all-time record now from 2022. And also to state this, lowest and highest pole to win conversion rates with only 10 poles. Verstappen already leads this chart as it stands. The tragic thing is, I'm sure for Ferrari and Leclerc fans, that Verstappen's Leclerc pole to Verstappen win rate is actually higher than Leclerc's pole to win rate, which is pretty tragic. But yeah, these are the names on the opposite side of the list. Leclerc appears here with only 2 out of 9 races that he's won when being on pole, and Hamilton has about a 60% win rate from pole, and some other of the top performers here, Alberto Ascari, Fernando Alonso, but Max Verstappen as it stands with the highest win rate by far from pole position. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.